Hey guys, welcome to the I Hope They Hear This podcast, and so excited to have our next guest on. Her name is Allison Song. Hello, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I've been anticipating this podcast since I talked with your husband Kit. I think it was 2 episodes ago, and just yeah, he's been telling me that your story really just needs to be told to all the little boys and girls out there. Um, so
Mm,
yeah, I'm just really excited to capture that story, and even for me to hear too, because there are a lot of parts of it I don't know. So just
right.
really excited to hear for myself. But yeah, before we get into all that, can we just start with an introduction? Kind of who you are, what you do, um, both your kind of day job and your businesses that you've started. Yeah, and really anything you
Yeah.
want to add as well.
I'm sorry, say that last part
Yeah,
again.
and
It lagged a
anything
little
you
bit.
want to add, feel free
Oh,
to add.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my name is Allison Song. I adopted my lovely last name through Kit 6 years ago. I am the owner and designer of Heritage and Bloom, which is a small batch accessories company where I hand make and design a lot of jewelry pieces as well as hair accessories. That's fortunately become my day job now. It took me a long time to transition between, you know, having a 9 to 5 to going to this full time. I do still have a part-time job locally at a wine and cheese restaurant, which is like my happy place. Is like my home away from home. I mean, currently right now with the COVID-19 crisis is
Mhm.
currently under like lockdown, but yeah, so that's what I do about 10 hours a week. All my other hours are towards Heritage and Bloom.
Wow, so a wine and cheese restaurant.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Two of my favorite hobbies.
so then I have to ask, what's your favorite pairing of wine and cheese?
Ooh, that's hard. I think it's really hard because it depends on like the day and the mood.
Hmm.
So it's like I have a favorite cheese of the day and like a favorite wine of the day when I work there. Um, but one of my favorite pairings that I found is like this wash rind water buffalo cheese. It's kind of funky, but if you pair it with like bison pastrami, it is so good. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, I recently kind of got introduced to the world of wine and cheese because I was on a
Yeah.
business trip to Thomasville, Georgia, and they have a
Hmm.
restaurant there they have a what's the word for wine expert? Like sommelier?
Oh, sommelier.
Sommelier, and they
Yeah.
had a cheese expert. There's a word similar for the cheese expert.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were there for like 3 hours just talking about cheese and wine the whole time. It was fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
It's such a cool experience. It's like, and like our place is really fun. Like on the outside, it may look a little pretentious just because it is wine and cheese and there's like a certain, not stigma, but like a certain feeling attached to wine and cheese. You think it's like fancy and like you have to dress up, but we keep it super casual and it's more about like the experience of educating like
mhm.
beginner lovers or like full-time, like advanced lovers of wine and cheese. So we try our best to like, yeah, make everyone feel comfortable.
So what role do you have there?
I just serve. I serve, and sometimes I help pick out the wine
Cool.
flights. But it's mostly my escape from home because,
Mhm.
I don't know if you're going into work right now, but I'm sure most of the world is experiencing the work from home lifestyle,
Mhm.
and it's very hard. It's very isolating.
Yeah,
It's very lonely, and so this job is kind of like my social escape.
gotcha.
So I try to do most of my work at home, like all the production, marketing, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But I do need like a social escape. Otherwise, it's just like me, our two dogs, Rain and Bruno, and like when Kate gets home from work, I just like talk his ear off. And so it's for the best for everyone that I have this social escape just for a few hours a week.
Wow, and that's an awesome place to work at, wine and cheese, because
Yeah. Oh,
at the
fun.
restaurant that I was at, they love talking about cheeses, wines, and they're
Right.
just so welcoming. So I imagine it's the same kind of atmosphere there.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So I asked this to Kit too, and he did kind of explain, but I just wanted to ask your ties to Atlanta and kind of what motivated your move out to Colorado?
Yeah, for sure. So I was actually born in New Jersey, in a small little town called Secaucus. I've
Mm.
actually I don't have any memories of it, but my parents moved down to Atlanta around when I was like, I think I had just hit 100 days as a baby, and so I really consider myself born and raised in Georgia just because that was my whole upbringing. I started in Doraville and like Dunwoody as a child, so I went to elementary school there, and then we moved to Johns Creek when I was about fifth grade.
Mm.
And then that's where I went to middle school, high school, and then I went to Boston for college. So, my parents are still there. Most of like my close friends are still in Atlanta. Obviously, kids' parents are there too. Um, but yeah, so like while I was in college in Boston, I got to study abroad, thankfully in France, and I also did a work abroad in Cape Town, South Africa.
Oh
But
wow.
so I've always had this like sense of adventure and just like a desire to travel and to explore new places and like new communities. And so when we came back, oh yeah, and then Kid and I also taught English together in South Korea. I don't know if you knew that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so when we came back, we're like, man, do we want to stay in Atlanta? We did for a few years after we got married, but we're like, we really want to explore somewhere else together. It's probably not going to happen internationally, but let's try somewhere on the west, like more on the west side.
Hmm.
And it was going to be the Bay Area, but it's so expensive there. Like it would have been a box of what we could afford. And we have two large rescue dogs. So we're like, nah, that can't, that's probably not gonna, be ideal. So we settled on Colorado, just because we're mountain people. We love everything revolving around the mountains, like from summer, camping, hiking, to snowboarding. And so, yeah, that's how we ended up here.
You know, actually, I forgot to mention this on Kit's podcast, but I actually went to Denver, Colorado for my bachelor trip. And I texted Kit and said, hey, do you have any recommendations of cool trails that we can go on? And he recommended, I think it was called the Iron Tail.
Sorry, say that again.
Was it? It was Iron something, Iron Tail or Iron Head. I forget the name of
Iron.
the trail. I think it was it was in Boulder, maybe. But I forget the exact details of it. It was a while ago. But I do want to say, Kit was a big influence in the way that my bachelor trip unfolded. So I should have thanked him for that. But it just reminded me when you were saying that you guys are mountain people, and
Oh yeah.
I really love hiking, and that was a really great trail. So I
Oh,
really
that's
enjoyed
so
it.
awesome. So did you spend most of your time in Boulder, or did you
So
explore other places?
we stayed in an Airbnb in Denver,
Mhm.
and so we did all the stuff that I like doing, and I like doing a lot of childish stuff. So like we went to an adult arcade in the city one night. We went skiing. Um,
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah, we went to skiing. I don't know if you know where Winter Park is. Um,
Winter Park?
yeah, Winter Park.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
those were the only big things that we did. We mostly just kind of hung out in the
That's
city
a
when we went.
lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a short trip.
Yeah,
Hiking, skiing, arcade, like city fun. Yeah, you guys did
yeah,
a lot.
yeah. It was really fun.
Oh, that's great.
So isn't Colorado getting kind of expensive too? Because I Bayside, definitely very expensive, but
Yeah.
especially within the city of Denver, it's getting really expensive, right?
It's insane. It's like so we're in Fort Collins, which is an hour above Denver. So technically a college town because Colorado State University is based here. And so we're like, it's a college town. It can't be that expensive. But even within the 3 years that we've been here, rent has gone crazy.
Wow.
Um, we've been looking into buying a house, but it's just insane. Like
Mm.
because people are coming from California with cash, they're like dictating how much houses are costing. And I've heard even in Boulder, the median price is like $1 million.
Wow.
And Fort Collins is like catching up very quickly. So we're like,
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know about buying now. Like we're still entertaining the idea of either buying here or Atlanta. So
Mhm. Wow, wow. So cool. So are you guys, do you think you're going to stay in Colorado for a while, or do you have any kind of, have you guys ever entertained the notion of coming back to Atlanta?
We do. I mean, Atlanta's always on the table just because our parents are there. Like wherever our parents are, that's always going to be an option,
Mhm.
especially because we're talking about kids soon. And so we just
Mhm.
want to be near them. That's like ideal. But
Mhm.
it's hard because we love Colorado so much. It's
Yeah.
like if we could just pick up all our family and friends and drop them where we are, that would be like the best case scenario, you
Yeah.
know?
Uh-huh. Wow.
So we talk about it, but we're taking it kind of like year by year.
Mhm.
We kind of like evaluate like every 6 months to a year.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're talking about it, but no executive decisions made yet.
Because your business is pretty mobile, right? Like you don't need
Exactly.
to be tied down to a single location, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So when I left, so even like coming to Colorado, my business was mobile because back then it was Flower Crown Society, which I mean, Heritage and Bloom is basically the same thing. It's just a different name.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was like products that I could ship out or like do markets in that location. And I was also a wedding planner and florist. So I talked to all my clients who I had weddings for like after the move, and I was like, "Are you guys okay with me traveling back?" They're like, "Yeah, sure." And like I even picked up a bunch of new weddings after the move because they're like, as long as you can get here physically, like we don't care.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
So
then, you know what? Yeah, I think that's perfect to start talking about your first kind of initial, I guess, the initial version of your business, the Flower Crown
mhm,
Society. I actually thought you
mhm.
started that after you moved to Colorado, but that birthed in Atlanta?
Atlanta,
Oh,
yeah. It actually happened in 2014, 2013, 14.
wow, wow. So then,
Yeah.
yeah, can you kind of just walk us through how you, from the moment that the first thought popped into your head, hey, I'm going to start a business, to when you actually started doing things with it? Can you kind of walk us through how
Yeah,
that unfolded?
definitely. I mean, it's not as linear as I would like in hindsight.
Mhm.
It was definitely a side hustle, kind of like fun hobby. So back then, I was working for Golden Stella, which is like a really large accessories company.
Mhm.
Back then, they were experimenting with like a marketing department, and so I was like one of the first hires there. And so one of my jobs was to do monthly, quarterly photo shoots and lookbooks. So I would curate like a whole collection of products because they have like hundreds of thousands of jewelry to choose from. So I would like choose a theme, curate it, and kind of like design like a photo shoot around it.
Mhm.
So one of the spring photo shoots that I wanted to go for was like Wildflower Girl, or I forget the exact title, but um I really want like a flower crown as a prop for the model because I was like, I think that'll just really elevate what I'm trying to go for. So I was like, you know what? Like I'm doing wedding florals. I think I could swing this. So I made the flower crown for the model. And once the photo shoot came out, that model posted a photo and all of her model friends were like, oh my gosh, like where did you get that flower crown? Like I
Mhm.
want one.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that's kind of how it jump started because they're like those models would exchange their time for one of my crowns, and then the demand just kept growing and growing just from like friends of friends, and then I was like, maybe I should like start selling these because back then it was just for fun. So I threw up like an Etsy shop, which is like an online platform for handmade products.
Mhm.
Pretty much anyone can list any products that they make on there. And so I was like, man, I really need a name. And I was like thinking, and like in the middle of the night, I was just like, I woke up and I was like, Flower Cross Society. It just like hit me. I don't know what it was about it, but I just loved it. I loved how inclusive it sounded. I loved how like fun and bohemian it sounded. Like it really struck me. So that's the name that I went with.
Mhm. So just for people who might not be, I guess
Mhm.
I'll just say it bluntly, for people who might be ignorant like me, what exactly is a flower crown?
Yeah, it's exactly like it sounds. It's just literally like a halo,
Mhm.
a halo of flowers. So, I mean, I range from using fresh flowers for special occasions and like in-person events. So, a lot of my brides and like bridesmaids and flower girls got crowns if they wanted them. Otherwise, I would work with artificial flowers and ship those off to customers who were like not based in Atlanta at the time.
Oh wow, so you do both real flowers and
Mhm.
so what is more in demand? Because I would imagine that crown made of artificial flowers, because they that can last forever, whereas actual
Exactly.
flowers they have an expiration date, right? The,
Exactly. So, I mean, if you think about real flowers for a wedding, right?
Mhm.
I would assume that most brides would prefer real flowers just because like
Mm,
the beauty of it, like you can't recreate a flower. Like you can artificially, but like you can tell the difference. And so the demand was higher in the wedding industry for real flower crowns versus like I had a lot of festival goers back then. Like that was when Coachella was getting big, like Bonnaroo, like all these huge festivals in the Southeast. And so that's where I would do like more artificial, like durable kind of crowns so
mhm.
they could accessorize their like festival outfits.
Wow, I see, I see. Because when you talk about flower crown, I remember seeing it back then and thinking, there's no way these are real flowers because that would be so difficult to like preserve, and you could
Yeah,
only really wear it one time. But it makes sense that people in weddings would like
right,
that. Wow,
right.
wow. So that kind of started rolling because of the models, and then you opened up your
Mhm.
Etsy shop. Um,
Yep.
but how did that? So yeah, so how did that turn into what eventually became Heritage and Bloom? Because wait, you started doing accessories with Flower Crown Society, right? It wasn't just flower crowns when it was Flower Crown Society, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that first part of the question? It
Ye-
like lagged a little bit.
Okay, sorry. No, I actually I pivoted in the middle of my question.
No
Uh,
worries.
flower crowns, that wasn't
Mhm.
exclusively what you sold with Flower
Uh-huh.
Crown Society, right? You had accessories as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So it started off as just flower
Mm-hmm.
crowns. That's kind of where the name came about. And then I was like, I it was becoming a bigger and bigger side hustle where I eventually quit my job and only focused on my wedding planning and floral business as well as flower crown society. And so that's when I was like, I need to expand my products. Like flower crowns are so niche, like it's so like specific. And so that's when I introduced head wraps, which is an accessory that I loved from when we lived in Korea. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
man, these are genius. Like there's wire inside. And so you can kind of mold them to the style that you want, and they're very versatile. And so my mom and I, so she does like alteration, she's really good at sewing, that's where I learned. And so her and I kind of like created a pattern and like figured out how to do them. And so that was one of my first products that I still keep today.
Oh wow. So
Mhm.
what exactly is a head wrap? What is it meant to like? uh,
Yeah, it's like it's like a thin, the way I make, there's like different variations of it, but the way I make it is like a maybe a 6-inch piece of fabric that's about a yard long. And so and there's a wire that extends end to end.
mhm.
And so you could wrap it around your head and like do like a scarf. You could do like a bow. You could just tie it around your ponytail. You could wear it as a bandana. So yeah, it's just like a versatile accessory that people
Gotcha.
just love.
I
Yeah.
want people to kind of hold that thought in their head because I want to get back to it. Because that
Okay.
because your head wraps, like you making your head wraps, ended up becoming a very useful and helpful
Yeah.
skill,
Yeah.
especially in this situation right now, right?
Mhm.
So we'll circle back to that. So after you started doing the head wraps, what
Mhm.
other how did you kind of introduce your other um, accessories and
Yeah.
products?
So, okay. So, like, once we left Atlanta, I lived in Colorado with Kit and our good friend Josh. Like, it was, I mean, I'm going to be a little transparent here. It was like really fun for the first year, right? Because the novelty of living somewhere new and like everything's brand new, like new people. Like, we didn't know anyone here really, just like one mutual friend in Denver. That was it. And so everything was very exciting and like that, that kind of like carried me through the first year.
Mm-hmm.
I think when year 2 and 3 hit, that's when I really struggled with lack of community and like lack of, because I have such close girlfriends. Like they're like my best friends, like yeah, so without them, I think I really struggled with like that social fulfillment.
Mm,
And it took me to like a dark place because Fort Collins is very much like an island. It's like it's a small town. Imagine like Athens or like Asheville. It's just a small mountain town, like not a big city like Denver where it's like a little bit more diverse. Um, and so I really struggled with just the lack of diversity, and like I couldn't really connect with anyone. And I don't think I really tried. I really do think I tried. It's just like it just wasn't there. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And during that time with Flower Crown Society, I was also hitting like a wall. Like that's when flower crowns were getting really mass produced. So like by Forever 21 or Target, you would just see them popping up for like $2 a piece. And they were just like so crappy, like the materials used and like, you know, the production's like it's probably just made in China or something, and they're just selling it for super cheap. And it really like I know I shouldn't have taken it personally, but it really like tainted my view of flower crowns because my whole purpose with Flower Crown Society was to help women and girls feel beautiful, right? That was like my main mission, to help them feel brave and beautiful because it is such a bold accessory that I wanted them to carry with confidence. So when I started seeing these like flower crowns pop up, in mass markets, I was just like, man, that's really discouraging to me. And like, I know I shouldn't have taken it personally, but it did affect me. And so I was like hitting a wall. I really wanted to pivot and like turn to something else that brought me joy, the same joy that the flower crowns brought me.
Mm,
Um, and clay was something that I was always like really fascinated with. And so it was like during a creative slump, I was like, I just need to play with a new material. Like I just have to do it. Like I was in a funk for sure. So I was like, even doing that took me a lot of courage. Cause you know, when you start something new, you're always thinking, is this gonna work out? Like, what if it's just like crap?
mm.
But I was like, man, I really need to just explore a new medium and like get out of this funk. And so I did that I think it was like last February or March. I was also taking like a metalsmithing class just to get my hands on
Cool.
something new. Yeah. And actually that was like my first goal, to do metalsmithing and release jewelry that way. But I was like, wow, it's very, very expensive and it'll take me years to master. So I was like,
Mm,
I'll still try to do that on the side, like take classes here and there, but I want to just focus on clay. And so, yeah, the clay really, really went well. I launched like a small little batch on Etsy through Flower Crown Society just to see if people were interested,
mhm,
and it got like a great reaction. It was very affirming, and so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna keep going with this.
mhm. Oh wow. And
Yeah.
that's I feel like whenever I'm seeing posts on for Heritage and Bloom, you kind of centerpiece all the clay-based accessories, right? Or is that kind of your big product? Is it the bulk of your sales?
Right now it is. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So a lot of the clay jewelry is the bulk as well as the head wraps.
I
So
see.
those are like my two kind of like money makers, I guess.
Awesome, awesome. But before, because I wanted to take a step back a little bit and ask you about the process of starting this business, right? Because I'm sure it wasn't just you put it out there and the customers just came to you, right? Did you have to do any kind of footwork to, I don't know, because I know you did a lot of like markets, like pop up at markets and things like that, right? How was it pursuing all those things, and how did you kind of get your foot in the door for doing those pop ups?
Yeah. So I'm like almost to a fault. Like I have no shame in like reaching out to people. And so even with Flower Crown Society, like before I was anything, before I was even like a registered business, I would just be like, hey, free people want to like collaborate. Like,
Uh-huh.
and Free People is a big brand. It's like, I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's like it's the same group as Anthropology and like Urban Outfitters.
Hmm.
And they're like, sure. So like I did that with like Madewell. And these pop-up markets, it's actually like become so big, like this industry, that there's like hundreds of them happening around the US, like
Hmm.
with locally within like each little town or city. And so I did a bunch in Atlanta. So I knew what you know, what to expect.
Mhm.
So in Denver and like Fort Collins, I would just reach out to markets and like apply and like get in. And that's kind of like where the marketing happened. It was just like people coming into my booth, me sharing about the company and the mission behind it. And it's just a lot more fun when you can like go face to face with your customers, you know, because like I'm
Yeah.
not a brick and mortar. And so I'm just spending a lot of my time producing at home and just like there's no feedback. And so when I go to these markets, those are like some of my best experiences just because I can connect with people, um, like both customers and other vendor, like people around me. I can just connect with them. So that's why it's a little hard right now because like all my markets are canceled for the season. Like
Right.
I had like 6 lined up through May or June, and they're like all canceled.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know if that answered your
No,
question.
yeah.
Sorry.
So no, that's great. So um I was interested in that because my wife started a bubble tea pop-up
Yeah,
business.
I saw that. That's awesome.
So she kind of had to do the same thing. She just reached out to random pop-ups, applied to random festivals,
Right.
markets and things like that. So but that takes a lot of courage, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to put yourself out there, not just yourself,
Yeah.
but your product, right? So did you have to struggle with that in the beginning, or what is it just natural for you to just be like, hey, let's just get out there?
I mean, I almost want to say it was pretty natural. Like, I really enjoy collaborating with people. And so, any chance or opportunity that I saw that I could collaborate with a brand that I admired, whether it was like a small brand like me, like a small batch accessory, like that kind of small scale, or a big brand where they have a lot of reach, like either way, I just loved collaborating. And so, just the prospect of that happening, I was like willing to risk rejection after rejection. Like, it was worth
Mm,
it to me.
wow. Did you face a lot of rejection in the beginning?
Not that I remember. I mean, I'm sure I did, but I maybe I chose not to remember, but I don't think so.
No, that's awesome because the fact that you maybe even if you're blocking it out, I think it does say something about your character, your ability to say, well, I don't really focus on the rejections because
Yeah,
yeah, you're just kind of moving forward, right?
because
And
there's so much that came out of it, and so I can't like dwell on what could have happened because
mm,
so much happened that I'm so thankful that those people said yes.
right.
Mhm.
And I'm sure now you probably get invited to a lot of places as well, right?
It's definitely becoming that way. So like people will approach me to like get into their boutiques or their shops. It's still so like flattering. Like I never get sick of it. You know, like I never even if I become a huge brand, I don't think I'll ever get tired of like people approaching me because it's such an honor. It's like,
Mhm.
wow, you want to carry like my work in a space that you created, you
Mm.
know? It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
So,
Well, aren't I feel like you already are a pretty huge brand. Just by your Instagram following. I mean, you have a lot of followers. You have a lot of people. And when I look at your schedule, I mean, especially before the whole COVID-19, when I
mhm.
saw kind of your listing of all the events that you're doing, you're a
Mhm.
pretty big brand, right?
I wouldn't say so. Like,
No.
I don't think followers mean anything. I mean, I'm thankful for everyone that follows my account, but like, I don't think that translates to like, you know, how
Mm,
big my brand is, if
I
that
see.
makes sense.
I see.
Yeah, like I have personal goals for sure. And so I think when I hit those goals, then I'll be like, okay, maybe that's when I became a big brand.
Oh, wow. Okay, gotcha. Then, yeah, let me ask you then, because it sounds like I saw the whole transition happening from when you rebranded to Heritage and Bloom.
Yeah.
I was following on Instagram, like when you were kind of like leading up to it, and you had that like launch party and all that. But I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
wondered, what motivated that transition, right? Because you already had I mean, what I perceive to be huge name recognition with Flower
Mhm.
Crown Society. So there is risk involved in rebranding, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, I just wanted to ask you, what made you feel like that risk was worth it to rebrand to Heritage and Bloom?
That's such a good question. So yeah, like I alluded to earlier with Flower Crown Society, like I hit a wall with the accessory of flower crowns.
Mhm.
And so I was like, man, this name is so specific. Like it's such a I'm so attached to this accessory that I feel like I can't evolve and grow with this brand.
Mm.
And so I was like, how can I change my name, but also like kind of stay true to what I wanted to carry out, like mission wise with Flower Crown Society. And like, that's also around the time when I was struggling a lot internally, like about my background, like ethnic background. And so, yeah, like I said before, college is like not very diverse at all. I think, I don't know if Kit mentioned it in his podcast, but Asian Americans make up, or Asians overall make up less than 2%.
Yeah.
And so, coming from Atlanta, and I lived in like Boston and New York. So like I've always been around diversity and like never, I probably took it for granted because like I came here and didn't expect that I would run into a conflict or like internally like about how I'm like one of like, 2% of Asians here.
Yeah.
And that's like also around the time when like at the bistro, I would be asked a lot, like, what are you? Where are you from? And like, you know what that question implies, right?
Right.
Like, where are you from? And like, I try to be smart about it. It depends on my mood of the day. But I'll be like, oh, I'm from New Jersey or Atlanta. And they're like, no, like, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, so my parents are from like South Korea. But so it really depends. And like that, I was really annoyed by it at first because I was like, why is this responsibility on me to educate these people? Like it was really, really frustrating because I was like, okay, so Ken and I talked about it a lot and he was like, maybe it's our responsibility to share and like educate because I would get asked even, what's your nationality? And I was like, I'm American. I was like born and raised in the US. So instead of like going back with a snarky answer, I would say, well, my like ethnicity is South Korean. So I would like kind of change the verbiage just so that hopefully they can keep that in the back of their minds to, use that same language for the next person that they ask.
Mm.
And so it was like around that time when I also picked up a lot of like Korean historical fiction books. Like Pachinko got really, really big. I don't know if you read that book.
Mm.
Like #1 bestseller for like a lot. You should read it. It's a really, really great book. So Pachinko, and then I read this other book called If You Leave Me by Crystal Kim. And that's kind of when I got the name and like Kit kind of shared the experience of like, I was just like reading it one day and I was like, oh my gosh, like heritage, like because I had Anne Bloom. I already had that like part set of my brand, my rebrand. And so I was like, I just need like a first word. And so like, that's when it hit, heritage and bloom. And
Wow.
so yeah, and so that I really wanted a name that I could grow and evolve with, something that was timeless, but something that was like really, I really love flowers. Like my Korean name is Changmi, which is
Oh.
rose. Yeah, so flowers have a lot of meaning in my life. So I really wanted some floral element, but I really wanted something like timeless and like classic. So yeah, that's how it came about.
Wow. So then, do you feel like you're gonna in I don't know what this would look like, but somehow weave into your product line elements of like, traditional Korean heritage or anything like that in the future? Or
Yeah, so my first collection is called Taegoki, which is inspired by the South Korean flag. And like that's my own rendition of like it's my own interpretation of the flag, So I use a lot of the geometric, like the trigrams and like the circle and like the wave, the yin yang wave. But I will love to like I think it will take a little bit of education and research, but that's kind of what this whole brand is. Like it's a journey for me to educate myself and like hopefully to raise awareness of like Korean history because like as a second gen Korean American, like our parents were so busy just raising us and like working. They didn't have time to educate us like on their background, like, and it's so sad to think that our future generation like that could get lost.
yeah.
And so this is kind of like my own self journey of like preserving it somehow, even if it is through my own reinterpretation. um but yeah, to like kind of create a legacy of like let's keep digging because South Korea has such a deep and like rich culture and like history that there's is endless.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So do you think moving forward, um, are you going to try to reintroduce or not reintroduce? Are you going to try to introduce a new medium and things like that? Or is foreseeable future, do you think you're gonna kind of keep with what you have so far?
Yeah, I think for now, I have a tendency to like get really excited about something and just like do too soon. And so I
Mhm.
think right now I'm in a season of trying to perfect what I've learned. And so that is like polymer clay. That is like the medium that picked up last year. So it hasn't
Mhm.
even been a full year yet. So I really want to just take my time with that medium. But I would love to eventually like get into metal smithing and like launch really, really like quality, like handmade kind of jewelry that way.
Mhm.
But yeah, for now, I'll just stick with what I have.
So I wanted to ask because I feel like you're making stuff all the time. Just looking at when I because as a follower of the Heritage and Bloom Instagram
Yeah.
page, is it truly you're making stuff like 24/7, or do you set aside time throughout the week to make batches like whenever you get time, or how
Yeah.
does your scheduling work?
I mean, it's pretty fluid. My schedule, like, yeah, it's very, very fluid. So a lot of my time does go towards production, but it's not as much as you would expect, like from the outside in, like looking
Mm,
outside in. A lot of my time is actually spent on the computer, just like administrative stuff, financial stuff, emails, like customer service, because I'm a solopreneur. Like there's no one else doing
mm,
this except me. So I'm like doing operations, like every single aspect of the business. So it's kind of crazy how little time I spend on actually creating the products. And like this year, one of my goals is to get really efficient and like just like produce even more. And so I've been time tracking where I spend my time and like each task and project of the day. And it's crazy. Like my clay production time is like a fraction of everything else. And
oh
so
wow.
yeah, I wish it was 24/7 because that's where I'm happiest from like like creating and like yeah, working with the products, but most of my time is just spent elsewhere.
Mhm. And I wanted to ask because now that we see kind of how you operate and kind of the things that you're producing and things like that, I wanted to ask if there was any other reason, I mean, besides financial, because I mean,
Yeah.
finances is a huge thing, so let's not discount that. But were there any other motivating factors for you wanting to start your own business and leaving your day job and kind of growing it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think I've known from a young age, maybe not necessarily that I wanted to have my own business, but I knew I wanted to like work with my hands first and foremost.
Mm,
Like I'm very much like a crafter, like 2D art, not so much. So like that's Kit's strengths, like drawing, writing. He's really, really good at those are definitely like his strengths. Whereas I like to like mold and like, like sculpt to things and like whatever medium it is. And so I think from a young age, I've always known I wanted to just like make things.
mhm,
And like whether that was going to bring me financial stability or not, I was just like, I just love doing it. And like when I was at Northview, I took a jewelry design class, and that's like the moment I knew I wanted to be a jewelry designer.
mm,
So I actually wanted to apply to Parsons because they had a really good program. But my mom was like, that's so like not practical. Like, Korean parents are just like, what are you thinking? That's like art school education money. That's just too much. Like this is such a big risk. And so I ended up going to school for marketing graphic design.
mm.
But I think it's crazy. I think a lot of people, if they just look back on their childhood or even like middle school, high school, and like think back what brought them the most joy and like what hobbies were they doing back then, I feel like it could translate into their dream job today.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't know. I just have always wanted to be a jewelry designer.
gotcha. That story is really familiar to me because I was on in the very similar boat. I wanted to go to art school for
Yeah.
graphic design, but my parents, well, my brother actually, he convinced me out of it and told me to go to a more stable uh, field. So I ended
Yeah.
up going to an engineering school. But I do
Right.
think, yeah, like thinking back, if I could go back, I think I would, because there is a lot of kind of lingering regret of
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what could have been if I pursued what I wanted to do. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's also like never too late. Like I know it's like once you get established in your career and like the industry that you're in, it's like harder and harder day by day, year by year to step away from that. But if you're like truly unhappy, I don't know. It's like for me, it's about what brings you the most joy. Like what makes you come the most alive because life is so so short and like especially during the season like we're experiencing that even more that life is so fleeting. And so yeah, it should bring you financial stability, but and there are responsibilities that we have, but if you're able to like swing it to explore like different things that make you happy.
yeah, yeah. And I think the reason this podcast was formed, it's actually a part of
Mhm.
that. There was a creative side that I wanted to pursue,
Mhm.
and this was the most practical way to do it. So this is kind of the genesis of this podcast.
That's
But
awesome.
I really like, I totally agree with what you said because a lot of the podcast guests I've had on before, we talk about kind of their passion. And
Mhm.
I do try to convince them, say, hey, life is so short. You should kind of pursue what you enjoy instead of just going after what
Right.
you think gives you, a financial stability. Because
Yeah.
finances, again, especially with, this coronavirus going around and the Dow, the Wall Street, stocks are getting
Yeah.
pummeled, right? So finances are super fleeting too. So
Mhm.
I think,
Exactly.
yeah, it's a really
Yeah,
good
and like
reminder. Mhm.
yeah, and like I think it's transparent even more how much I love it because right now like sales have just flatlined. Like just, like jewelry is a non-essential product right now. And so even in the midst of like no sales, no markets, all my boutique partners are closed. Like even in the midst of that, I have no regrets. I'm like so happy still doing this,
Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, but you've actually found a way to repurpose your skills to help people in this current situation, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of alluded to that with your head wraps because from what I understand, from what I was told by Kit,
Mhm.
you kind of took your skills making the head wraps, and you repurposed it to
Yeah.
make masks, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So how did you start doing that? How did that come about?
Um, I don't even remember the exact moment. So like we were in Atlanta a few weeks ago for Kit's sister's wedding. And so Atlanta, that it was like one of the first big cities to get hit, like on the East Coast. And so we were like, we left right when it was getting like a little urgent. It felt a
Mm,
little weird to leave at that time, but we're like, we just have to get back.
yeah.
And so we were already like furiously looking at the news, just like glued to our phones about like updates and like stats. And the more news that came out, we're just like, wait, how are these like frontline healthcare workers not protected? Like they're dealing with like COVID-19 positive patients and they're like not getting the proper protection. Like that was so absurd to me. I'm sorry. Like it was just
Yeah.
so crazy to me. And I was like, what option do they have? And like I saw the CDC came out with worst case scenario, just wear a bandana or like just wear a piece of fabric over your face. And I was just like, that's almost unacceptable to like have these frontline workers who are risking their lives and like risking they're sacrificing so much that it just didn't sit right with me. And so I was like, maybe I'll try to look into making masks. And that was kind of like before it got huge. It's really big right now, which is amazing. Like there's just home sewers all around the country making fabric masks for like nursing homes and people who are accepting them. And so I really I didn't feel creative like one bit when I got back to Fort Collins, just because like the intensity of the situation and like how dire it was. And so I was like, I wasn't feeling creative, but I really wanted to help. How can I use my skills to help this situation? And so I found a pretty good tutorial. I bought some fabric and some like materials. And then when I was like cutting it, I was just like, oh my God, this is like the same exact way that I cut my head wraps, like same exact width and like the length. Like it was nuts. I was like, I like ran to Kit's room. I was like, oh my God, you'll never guess what. So it felt very much like it was my purpose for this
Mm,
season. Yeah.
wow. And I know when I talked to Kid about it, I actually asked him, if there were listeners that could help contribute, so that you can make more. But from what I'm seeing on your Instagram, you're already kind of at max capacity in terms of production, right? Of these.
Uh, yeah, like, so what I really need help with people, or I really would like people who can sew to help out, just because like I keep getting financial contributions, which is great, but I'm like, I haven't even gone through half of the financial support that I got. And
Right.
so my mom is actually helping now, and like my friend in Fort Collins is helping now, but there's just like not enough hands to go around to like produce. And
Hmm.
like actually earlier, I'm like kind of in a weird mood right now because I mean, I vented to Kit, but there's a really like interesting situation that happened this morning about these fabric masks.
Hmm.
So, you know, I put it out on my Heritage and Bloom platform, like my Instagram stories, just because there's more reach that way
Yeah.
as opposed to my personal Instagram. And so I put it out, and like I had 3 vendor friends who reached out, and they're like, I would love to get involved. I would love to donate my time and like help make these masks for healthcare providers. And so I was like, great, like that's amazing. And one of them in Fort Collins is helping me a lot, and she's like making a lot. But so I found out this morning the other 2 are just selling them now. Like they're just gonna sell them.
Wow.
And so it was really disappointing.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm still processing the emotion. So
Yeah. No, that's.
yeah, I think the situation is really revealing a lot about just how companies are responding, like whether you're a small brand or a big brand, like how you're responding to the situation. Are you capitalizing on things that people need,
Mm.
or just trying to help? So
Right.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. No, but I think it is a good thing to try to focus on the good that's happening as well. Like you
right.
said, it does reveal a lot of, because there are a lot of big corporations not really doing as much as they could be.
Yeah.
But when I see people like you, and the people kind of around you, uh, financially supporting you to the point where you can't even, you haven't even got through half of it.
Right.
There's so much good out there. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very. I mean, when I first saw that you were making these masks, I remember I showed my wife. I said, "Man, Allison is so cool. Like, I can't believe that. It's because it's like it's your livelihood, right? You're making accessories, you're making headbands. That's your
Yeah.
livelihood. But you're saying, you know what, this takes precedence. Let me try to help out, and you're giving your time and your skills to, helping out people. And I think it's great. I think it's especially great because I have several nurse friends, and one of them is actually she's working directly with COVID patients,
Wow.
and she keeps telling me how even though the situation is chaotic and they're overwhelmed,
Right.
they're so touched by the help that they're receiving. People buying them meals, because there are people literally sending boxes of Chick-fil-A or
That's amazing.
Zaxby's, and
Yeah.
giving packets of masks and things like that. So um, yeah, the situation is sad when it does reveal kind of the negative sides of humanity.
Mhm.
But I wanted to encourage you because I'm sure there are people on the other receiving end of your generosity, just being super thankful, super inspired, and super encouraged by it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's.
You. I'm trying not to let it affect me. I'm just getting emotional because I just found out about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like I had such hope that we could do even more with their help.
Mhm.
And the next thing I know, they're just gonna sell it. Like they're just selling it to their customers. And so, and like I shared like all my knowledge and education. I was like, they didn't even say thank you,
Right.
and just like went ahead to sell it. So yeah, I'm still processing that, but I think you're right, just focusing on doing good and like helping
Yeah,
where I can. So
yeah.
yeah.
So then I don't know. Maybe this is, you feel free to just say there's nothing others can do. But if there's someone listening, kind of inspired to help out in some way, what would you recommend that they do?
Mm, I feel like all of us have such a unique skill set.
Hmm.
And so I would just like try to dig into what your talent is, like what your talent and skill is,
Hmm.
and just see if that can translate into like an active service, or even if you're like well off, like financially stable during this time when most people aren't, maybe like making sure to get like takeout and delivery from your local restaurant, like as
Right.
simple as that, because everyone needs food, everyone needs meals around 3 times a day. So doing that, like focusing on the small like mom and pop businesses. And for the healthcare providers, like you said, like meals, I saw like a meme, or not a meme, like something on Reddit that was like, oh, we just got like a hospital just got like a Keurig with like 100 pods. Like they were so excited,
Yeah.
something like a generous donation like that.
Hmm.
I think the gesture carries far over than what the actual thing is.
Yeah. And I want to give a shout out to my wife, because one thing that she did that really convicted me was, so my wife, she had a pop-up shop coming up, a pretty big one, because she did really well there last year. It was coming up next month or so, and it
Yeah.
got canceled, obviously.
Yeah.
And we've been seeing a lot of bubble tea places creating like make your own, make at home bubble tea kits and selling it to their customers. And I actually said to her, "Hey, why don't you do that? You missed out on this event, so why don't you do that and try to get some revenue?" And she looked at me
Right.
like, "Hey, we're doing fine financially. Like I don't
Yeah.
need to do any of this. And me doing this might take away sales from other mom and pop bubble tea shops that are
Mm,
struggling and trying to, keep their head above water." So she said, "I would rather
yeah.
not flood the market when we don't need it, and, let those people try to, do whatever they can." So I was like, yeah, it's like a very indirect way, but also very impactful. I was very like,
That
wow.
really is really generous. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
So even things like that, I think we're all in this together. So we can try to help out in those ways.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, and speaking of that, I'm gonna ask you a question. Is actually a really selfish question because it's something that I want to know. As
Yeah.
a husband to a entrepreneur,
Yeah.
um, in what ways? Because I feel like Kit is such a caring guy. He's such a sweet guy, and just in the interactions I have with him, I know like it's in his top priorities to support you and, you know
Right.
uh, help you like grow as much as possible. What are some of the are there things that he does that really encourages you as an entrepreneur that I could possibly steal and do for my wife as well?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like behind every good entrepreneur, there's like a really good partner involved. Like whether they're on the scenes or behind the scenes, just emotionally supporting them. And like Kid is both, honestly, because for these pop-up markets, like it's crazy. Like most of them are in Denver. And so like he has a Subaru, which fits most of my display stuff. And like I have a Civic. So he'll like come down to Denver, help me set up my whole booth, drive back to Fort Collins, and then come back to Denver to help me break down. So
Wow.
that's like, and it's an hour away. So he like literally show me support with his time and like his labor.
Mhm.
But he's really good at affirming me with his words, and just encouraging me, like, because I get really nervous before every single market. Like it doesn't matter if I've done that market dozens of times and like I've done well, like I'll still get the jitters every single time. Like, what if they don't like this collection? What if they don't like this product? And he'll just be really encouraging, like just affirm me and say like, you'll do great, like, yeah, you're gonna kill it. And usually he'll like post something on Instagram about me, which is like really sweet. But yeah, I think it's all about the little things, just like words.
Mm.
It's the words that really carry me through.
Gotcha. That's really good to know because I do help with the physical stuff of
Yeah.
because my wife has a really big bubble tea cart, so we had to like haul it around. But I think I could work on the words part, just the affirmation part. That's good. I
It
like
could
that.
be like you could do it like on a post-it, just like you got this, like really simple, like
Hmm.
super simple. I think that could go such a long way.
Yeah, and I'm hoping people who are, you don't even have to be married to an entrepreneur, but if you have a friend
Right.
who's an entrepreneur, the little things go a long way. Evidently, looking at Allison because I feel like she's too humble to admit it, but I feel like she did create a very big brand. So I think it's from her success we can learn things. So thank you for that. I'm gonna start applying that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And lastly, I actually wanted to, because we got kind of Kit's take on it last week, but I know that when you guys, because you mentioned how Fort Collins, it's less than 2% Asians. And
Mhm.
right now, hate crimes against Asian Americans is at an all-time high. I saw
Right.
some really atrocious things happening.
Mhm.
Like here, actually, here in Johns Creek, Webb Bridge, there's a post office. Someone pulled a gun on a little girl and a grandma because they were wearing masks, and he said,
Wow.
"Oh, they're gonna give me corona." So yeah, I mean,
Were they
thankfully,
Asian?
yeah, I think they were Korean, and thankfully no
Wow.
one got hurt, and the guy got arrested. But I mean, things like that are happening. But you guys kind of had a run-in, a situation. It wasn't as dangerous, but
Mhm.
uh, you kind of felt uneasy, right? Can you kind of describe what happened when you guys went back to Fort Collins? Went to was it a grocery store where you kind of
Yeah,
got
I
weird
think I
looks?
think that's what Kit was referring to. I know he like mentioned the rest area where that guy was kind of like
Oh, that's right.
standing between the bath. It's funny because he didn't tell me about it, and I literally didn't notice at all. Like he told me like a week later, and I
Mm,
was like, "Oh my god, I didn't know that happened." I was so oblivious because I was
mm,
playing with Bruno.
mm,
Um, and then the whole grocery store incident, honestly, I didn't really feel it as much as Kit.
mm,
And I really don't know if that's just me being naive and like, because I feel like I'm very aware of my surroundings and like I can pick up on energy and like different kind of like feelings from people. But I think I was just so focused on like, okay, let's just get everything on the list and like get out of here fast. And I know people were like keeping their distance, but I felt like that was because everyone was keeping their distance. Like everyone was doing that 6 foot radius at the time. And so I honestly didn't experience it as much as Kit. So I don't
mm.
know if I can respond to that question.
Okay, okay. No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
So that, yeah. So but I do think if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I would really encourage you to go back to the episode with Kit to kind of get his take on it, because I think it is important to at least be aware that it's happening, and to be vocal about it as Asian Americans, to say, hey, we're not okay with this.
Right.
And yeah.
And I don't know if you have any listeners in New York, but I know they have a hotline for hate crimes that are happening against Asian Americans. I feel like every single state and city should have a hotline right now.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, just a resource.
Wow.
Mhm.
Awesome. Before we close out, is there anything else that anything you wanted to talk about that I missed?
Hmm. Not at the top of my head, no.
Okay. Well, I just really wanted to thank you for being on. I know you're really busy with, everything that you're doing with the masks that you're making. And Kit actually did say, yeah, she's actually pretty shy about this stuff. So I know
Yeah, I don't
you.
talk to myself very often.
Yeah, no. So thank you so much for yeah, taking that leap and being a guest on this podcast, because yeah, having heard your story, it's so awesome that you literally started with nothing, and you don't even really remember the negative aspects of it much because you love what you're doing so much. So I think it really is a testament to what you can build when you pursue something that you love wholeheartedly, without ceasing. Which and thank you so much for modeling that for us, because I think yeah, we anyone out there who is thinking about doing something, I think they can really listen to your story, and with that same kind of attitude, pursue it. And yeah, it's good. It's especially uh, good because we don't have that many stories. We don't have this modeled by a lot of Asian Americans, especially second gen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like, I didn't touch on that, but that is one of the reasons why I want to succeed, like, and become a big brand so that other people can see, like, especially if they're in high school or college, that it doesn't have to be like the medical track or like the law track if they're not passionate about it, that there
Yeah.
are other creative ways to make a living.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so great. That that's actually one of the core, I want to say, unofficial core values of this podcast is don't do things just because you think you're meant to or you feel like you need to, but
Hmm.
pursue things that give you joy, pursue things that you're
Exactly.
passionate about. So, wow, thank you so much.
Exactly.
Um,
I know ultimately it's so simple. So yeah, I think that's great advice.
yeah. So your Heritage and Bloom
Yep.
Instagram name is just Heritage and Bloom, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Please follow that because she does have this basically a collection of all her products. So follow her there. If someone after having seen your Instagram says, "Ooh, I really like this piece," how can they purchase
Uh-huh.
this?
So my website is also just www.heritageandbloom.com.
Okay, and
And so
if
you'll be able to find everything there.
Gotcha. Perfect. So guys, please give her a follow. Please even if you're not into accessories and stuff, I would recommend you follow her cuz just to witness her journey. Cuz that's what I've been really enjoying from, when
Appreciate
you
that.
did the relaunch into Heritage and Bloom and
Yeah, yeah.
it's just really encouraging to see. So, once again, thank you so much for being on.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys for listening. If you have any questions or anything for me or even for Allison, please email me at ihthtpodcast@gmail.com. That's I hope to hear this abbreviated podcast@gmail.com or comment on Instagram at how I hope they hear this or on Twitter at IHTHT podcast. And yeah, anything directed toward Allison, I'll make sure she receives. And I'm sure you wouldn't mind people contacting you through your
Oh, not at
Instagram,
all.
right?
No, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So another reason to follow her on Instagram. Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Again, Allison, thank you so much for talking with us. And yeah, we'll talk to you
Thank
guys next
you.
week. Bye.
Bye.